All right, welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, want to welcome everyone. It's Q&A. Question came in. That question about pride. Question about being conceited, so to speak. Question was, in a person, Jew or non-Jew, J-I-T, really doesn't matter, right? Can a Jew or non-Jew pride themselves and say they worked very hard, they earned money, they learned well, let's say whatever? Is that a problem of being conceited? So being conceited, Orthodox Tzaddikim, in the ways of the righteous, says that it's the worst of all character traits. It's the base. It's the base of all bad character traits. Now, the question is, how far does it go? Now, if a person would say, and this is what I've been covering the last couple of weeks in Pirkei Avos, in ethics of our fathers, and that is, if a person would say that if they learned a lot of Torah, they're not allowed to take credit for themselves. Why? Because that's what they're created for, right? That's what you're created to do. So we spoke about that quite a bit. Still going to discuss it this week also, and that is, so if a person learned a lot of Torah, then why are they going to think they're so great? The Mishnah there says in Pirkei Avos, that's what you're created to do. But the reality is, in today's generation, heard of Noach Horowitz, should be well, the spiritual mentor of the yeshiva Torah Or in Jerusalem. And he once said many years ago, if today a person learns, let's say, they're learning Chumash, they're learning Talmud, and they understand what one of the commentaries says, and he understands it well, or she understands it well, what happens? He says the person should be so happy, they should go have a piece of cake, go have a piece of chocolate, go get yourself an apple. You should be ecstatic for this generation. Now, does that mean a person's going to have too much pride? I don't know. It's accomplishment. Accomplishment does not mean necessarily that a person's going to be conceited. On the other hand, the Rambam says any bad character trait, you run away from it like the plague. You try and find a happy medium, what he calls the middle path, except by this. In other words, by being conceited, there is no middle path. This is something you stay away from no matter what. That's how bad it is. Now, in this case, a person says, wow, I worked hard. I earned money. Torah, a little bit different issue, but person says they did something good. Are they allowed to pat themselves on the back and say they did a good thing? Is that going to lead to being conceited? I don't know. I don't necessarily it's going to lead to being conceited. I will say that this cream puff generation, being conceited, okay, there is an issue. There are people walk around with a chip on their shoulder. I don't think there's any question. Question is, people have very low self-esteem. Put themselves down. So a great rabbi once told me This generation, we're going to build people up. We're going to say how good they are, what their potential is, what they could be. Going to build people up. I asked them, I said, well, if that's true, aren't they going to become conceited? Why aren't we worried they're going to become conceited? He says, don't worry, I can work with people like that also. And he said, that's not the problem. Problem is, people have very low self-esteem. He's talking about in the Torah world. Secular world is a different issue altogether. See, plenty of people with ego might be false pride. But you see plenty of people stuck up on themselves. Entertainers, athletes, politicians. And they believe what the press says. See, we as Jews or Jew wannabes or non-Jews, we can't rely on that. There's no possible way to rely on such a thing. Why not? Because all the Bible says, as it brings down in duties of the heart, it's an impossibility. Because the person doesn't do a quarter, a third, a tenth of what we're supposed to do. So I'm going to think it's so great. You're going to say you learned a lot of Torah, but that's what you're required to do. That's your obligation. If that's your obligation, where's the pride come in? Some people mistake confidence for being egotistical. Being sure of yourself and what you know, well, maybe not what you know, but being sure of yourself does not mean a person's conceit. Doesn't mean that. They're sure of themselves, they know what they believe. There are a lot of things, obviously, we don't do right. There are things we do right. See, but when it comes to Torah, a person can never be complacent. We're not striving for mediocrity. We're not interested in mediocrity. We're interested in being the best Jews or non-Jews we can be. Again, if a person would say, I understood this commentary, and it makes them feel good because they learned this or they learned that, that's not necessarily pride. Person, though, has to be careful. Because the reality is, what can happen? Person says, look, I learned this. Look how well they learned it. May very well be true. What does that mean? We're doing what we need to do. That mean we can hold ourselves up high and say, look at me, look what I've done. Again, being sure of oneself is not being cocky. It's not showing that they're conceited. If that's what they're doing, that's wrong. And 100% that's wrong. That's why I think secular Jews think, as we mentioned earlier in the week, that we put them down. We look down upon them. And if a person does, they're wrong. That's forbidden. At the same time, what they do is wrong. Because the Torah says it's wrong. Doesn't matter what I think. Nobody cares what I think or anyone else. It's what the Torah says. So I have to keep what the Torah says to the best of my ability. So now the question is, someone who doesn't do that, and let's say we rebuke them, without even going into all that, but let's say we rebuke them, oh, you think you're better. And nothing to do with whether I think I'm better or not. Then that hopefully is not the case. What's the case? You're giving someone rebuke because they go against what God says. And that's our own obligation. When, where, okay, it's a whole discussion. But there's no obligation to rebuke. Torah says. At least by Jews. Who says I'm obligated to rebuke a non-Jew? Right? The Torah says, Book of Leviticus, the obligation to rebuke your people. The Torah says, who's your people? Jews. Do I have an obligation to rebuke non-Jews? I don't think so. Do I have an obligation to draw them close to their own mitzvahs? I don't think so. I mentioned this before. Even though someone will take me to task and say, hey, Jewish people, you got an obligation over here. You're a light into nations. So if you're a light into nations, you got an obligation to reach out to non-Jews. Who says? One thing has nothing to do with another. What's the obligation of a Jew to reach out to a secular Jew? Try and bring him back. Because there's a Talmudic dictum. It says that all Jews are interrelated. Kol Yisrael Ravim Zeh. That's the obligation to bring someone back. A non-Jew says that's my obligation. If they come to me, or they come to another Jew and say, I want to know what I'm obligated to do, then you have an obligation to help them. But I have to go out there, bang on people's doors, put up signs, by churches, other places, and say, gotta hold by no laws. Who says? Who says that's my obligation? So, doing what we need to do in no way says, I think I'm better. And so we shouldn't say it or think it. That's my obligation. Now, the secular Jew would say, you think you're better because you keep Shabbos? Has nothing to do with thinking I'm better or not. God said you have to do it. There's an obligation. Torah says clear it's an obligation. And if that's what the Torah says, that's what I have to do. Oh, so you think I'm wrong? Yeah, I do. Make no bones about it. You're wrong. Why? Because the Torah says you're wrong. Oh, but I think, okay, let's see proof. Let's see something. Don't say, I think this, I think that. Nobody cares what anybody thinks. Is the Torah true? God speak of Mount Sinai? Did he give the Torah to the Jews or he didn't? If he did, there are obligations. What does it mean? If he didn't, God forbids, then you can do whatever you want. And it's all make-believe. But a person has to be careful. A person has to be careful. Even if they learn well, even if they were successful in different things, there's a huge X factor. What's that huge X factor? The huge X factor is God himself. We never forget about the X factor. He's the one that does it, or not, or he makes it more difficult for people. He's the one in charge. The Chovos HaLevavos, through the heart, says, you got to put your best foot forward. True. If I put my best foot forward, is that any guarantee? No. It's no guarantee. God can say yay or nay. Put my best foot forward, bang my head against the wall. God doesn't want it to work, it won't work. So even if a person is successful, they do the right thing. Or God forbid, let's say better. Let's say they do the wrong thing, but they're successful in whatever they do. And they pat themselves on the back. So obviously it's going to be wrong. It's going to lead to being conceited. Because they think I did this, I did that, I did the other thing. And look how I built myself up. That's being conceited. So that's, as we mentioned, in the ways of the righteous says that is the base of all bad character traits. Every bad character trait, what's its source? Being conceited. That we have to stay and run away from like the plague. And that we have to be careful, even if a person learns and they did the right thing and they helped others and people are praising them. They got to say, this has nothing to do with me. This is my obligation. This is, you play it down because once you start believing what other people are saying, the stakes are tremendously higher. Tremendously higher. Because the person has to realize everything they do is very, very small compared to what we're obligated to do. So then people are going to say, so why bother? The other side of the argument. Why bother? I'm only doing a quarter what I'm supposed to do. Doesn't matter. We have to maximize. We can't rest on our laurels. We can't be interested in saying I'm happy being mediocre. Go in a job interview and say that. Oh, so what are your good character traits? What are you good at? Oh, not very much. I'm just sort of mediocre at most things. They'll never hire you. Now, obviously, you can't lie. You got to tell the truth, but there's no room. There's absolutely no room for someone who thinks they're God's gift to the world. Can they be, happy they did the right thing? Yeah, but you got to be careful. Because that, it's a slippery slope. Because the person can easily go to the other extreme and say, look what I've done over here. Look how I've helped over here. It's all about three people, them, themselves, and themselves. Civil complex. It's all about them. That is being conceited. So I would say it's not necessarily forbidden, but a person has to be very, very careful. Because, in this generation, and previous generations also, I don't think it's any different. If a person was successful in whatever they did, so they're believing what other people say. They're being flattered by others. And then they really think, look, I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other thing. We have what to be happy about accomplishments and things we've done. But we have to remember it's not all about us. We put in the efforts. Got to put in the efforts, the Chovos HaLevavos says. But see, putting in the effort does not guarantee success. Doesn't guarantee success. Person will say, of course it does. Nothing else does. It's what I do. But they're forgetting one very important thing. And they're saying, as the Torah says, the book of Deuteronomy, it's the power of my hands. It's what I've done. It's not what you've done. You put in the effort. And God made you successful. And someone once said, I became who I am despite my parents. So, okay, I understood where the comment came from. Maybe the parents weren't the greatest parents or whatever, but they became who they were despite them. So that's not a little bit conceited. Like you took yourself out of the womb, parents never did anything. You closed yourself, you went to work straight away, did all these things. You say, but parents did this, that, and the other thing. Okay. It might be true. Right? But there's gratitude for one very simple fact, which some people forget. And that is they brought you into this world. Oh, you tell me they did this wrong, that wrong, the other thing wrong, million things wrong. Okay. So then there's no question, do I have an obligation, to honor them if they're evil? Do I have an obligation to respect them if they've done terrible things? So honor, you might not have the obligation, meaning if they would walk in a room, you have an obligation to stand up. That you probably don't have an obligation to do. In my heart, to make fun of them, curse at them, to value them, embarrass them in public? No. That you're still not allowed to do. Now, first I'm going to say, this is a hard thing. This is almost impossible. You'll say, look what they did over here. Look how bad they were. So there's a disagreement of opinion between the Rambam and the Torah. son of the Rosh, whether someone who's evil got an obligation to honor them or not. So honor, maybe you don't have. Maybe you don't have. But to totally debase them and make fun of them, and that's a different issue. That's a different issue. We're not saying what they did is right. Not making that claim. They could have done terrible things. They could have done terrible things. Again, does that give me the right to say whatever I want? Seemingly not. Rabbi Chaim states clear. Even if I'm allowed to speak Lashon Hara against a non-Jew, who says I'm allowed to do whatever I want? Even technically, that would be the case. Who says I'm allowed to do it? It's not good for me. It's not good for my soul. Because then you might say other things about other people, other Jews, this, that. So we want to get in the habit of doing good things. Oh, but look what this person did. Now, if there's a benefit, if there's some sort of benefit over here, proper benefits, then I'd be allowed to. If I'm just spewing at the mouth, what we call diarrhea of the mouth, who says I'm allowed to? Oh, but they did this, and they did that, and they did the other thing. Not saying we disagree. Very well, it could be true. And you say they deserve me to say this, that, and the other thing. Could also be true. Could also be true. But the question is, okay, a person's venting. They want to get it off their chest, okay? But if there's no purpose in doing it, then how does that help me or anybody else? Doesn't. Regardless of what they've done. Right? And this is kind of hard. You know, parents, siblings, you know, friends, they can do terrible things. Terrible things. Say, what? I can't debase that. I can't say within context. Doesn't mean I have a right to say whatever I want. It's a mistake people make. Even if they're venting and, you know, if I can't say it's a good thing to get it out, should hold it within. But Torah says different. Torah says you got to learn how to deal with it. And if we had proper emunah and proper faith and belief in God, when someone says something, no matter who they are, and they say something bad or they cause damage or whatever, right? Isn't it true? The Bible says in the gate of emunah bitachon, isn't it true? God just manipulating this person to do it, even though they're going to be guilty for doing it. Aren't they really the stick? They're the stick. Nasty stick. Can be an extremely nasty stick. Nonetheless, God wants control. He wants the person to show control. What, you're going to sink down to the other person's level? But you're forgetting. And we forget when something happens. The person's being manipulated over here. Doesn't mean they're not guilty. Doesn't mean they don't have free will. God's just using them. Now, even if a person knows that it's hard, I agree. That I won't disagree with either. But we always have to look at what's going on now and the bigger picture. Right, give an example. Give an example. The Torah says, Book of Leviticus, you're not allowed to take revenge. Now, what does it mean you're not allowed to take revenge? What does it mean you're not allowed to take revenge? So the example given, as Rashi and others bring down, the example is, you ask Reuben asked Shimon to borrow his lawnmower, borrow an axe, whatever. And Shimon says no. And then Shimon comes to Reuben later, and he says, can I borrow this of yours? What does Reuben say? Reuben says, I don't let you borrow this. You don't let me borrow your axe, your lawnmower. Didn't you see? You know, my backyard's like a jungle. You don't let me borrow your lawnmower or whatever it was. So he says, you don't let me borrow, I'm not going to let you borrow. That's a Torah prohibition. Now, if you're worried, this guy, doesn't return things or he damages things, he never pays for them, this, that, that's a different issue. Then who says I have an obligation to lend it? If you know he's going to cause damage, maybe I don't have an obligation to lend. But if that's not the case, and the only reason you're not lending over here is because of what the other person did, so you're guilty. Yeah, but I really needed that lawnmower. I really needed this thing and he didn't let me. I'll tell you what happened to me. I mentioned this story before cell phones, right? Speaking to my parents, hearing on a payphone and whatever, and someone's waiting. Finally got so upset that he's been on the phone too long, they hung up the phone. Now, what was so important? What was so important to this buffoon? What was so important is where was I standing outside the pizza place that wasn't open. So this guy makes a phone call. He calls up the owner. And he says, we're hungry. The place isn't open. That was so important. That was so important. Now I thought about this. Imagine, okay, I went back to learn. This guy comes in and he says, by the way, can I borrow your pen? He asks if he can borrow my pen. Now, if I have any tinge of anger for what they did, and I said, no, I don't have one. Or I hide it so he can't see it. They know, sorry, I don't have one. What's the reason I didn't lend it? Because this guy's a buffoon. Look what he did. That's Torah prohibition. You're going to say, really? That's what the Torah wants? That's the obligation? That's the obligation. Just because the person did something wrong doesn't give you the right to do it. Man, how egregious it sounds. Man, how stupid it sounds here. Look what the person did. Guilty of all kinds of things. So what do I say? I'm going to get even. I'm going to borrow my pen, drop dead. Go borrow someone else's. I should lend you my pen after what you just did. So God says, you got an obligation. You got an obligation to give it to them if you have it. Obligation. You can't think, oh, look what this person did. Now that was before I learned Chovos. Duties of the heart. Had I learned duties of the heart, that would have been easy. Then I went on straight away. What's going on in the bigger scheme of things. But isn't it always easier understanding what I'm supposed to do than actually doing it? This is a much harder thing. But, a person will say, is this for everybody? Or is this just for the righteous? Maybe it's only for the righteous. God wants the righteous to hold at a higher level. Well, guess what? He ain't talking to the righteous. He's talking to everybody. That's our obligation. And if that's our obligation, that's what I have to do. No more, no less. Or maybe more, I don't know. Whatever it is. And that's what we're thinking. That's what we should be thinking. But what happens, like many things, we get caught up in the moment. We lose our minds. We didn't sleep enough. This happened, that happened. And we don't think. And we give what we call a knee-jerk reaction. And that reaction is whatever I think right now. But I'm not thinking. That's the problem. That's the problem. I have to act in the right way. Acting in the right way, a person might think this is well beyond what I'm supposed to do. And Torah says no. Torah says that's exactly what you have to do. That's exactly your obligation. High standards. But again, let's keep in mind one thing. Whatever I do, is this helping my soul grow, get closer to God or not? If I have a doubt, it's whatever, I shouldn't do it. Right? The person may ask, how many people do that on a regular basis? And that doesn't matter. If that's my obligation, that's what I have to think. This is what I have to think. And because of all the things that thrown at us, it's not so easy. We're so busy. We're running here, running there. We don't think. We act. When a person does such a thing, they're not in control. We have to be in control at all times, even when we find it's impossible. We have to have discipline. Discipline also not an easy thing. But a person has to be in control when things are, a person, like walking on water, everything's great, or even when things are very hard. Still have to have that equilibrium. Can't overreact either way. A psychologist once told me, great rabbi, the psychologist once told me, a person can have 70, 80 mood swings in an hour. Imagine during the day. Go up and down, but you have to be in control. And life's not so easy. Right? So the short, long answer here is we have to be careful. We have to be careful not thinking we're so great. But at the same time, we have to have self-esteem. 100% we have to have self-esteem. Can't feel like a piece of dirt all the time. You have to have a certain level of self-esteem. That doesn't mean I'm allowed to be conceited. I can be proud of my accomplishments. But a person has to realize, as much as you've done, there's plenty you haven't done. We're never satisfied where we are. That's why it rings in my ears. I hear someone, yeah, I'm good. I'm happy where I am. That's the kiss of death. Spiritual. Being happy where you are is saying, I don't have to change. I'm perfectly, what God wants me to be. Nobody is ever going to say such a thing. Nobody. If God runs the world and he's in charge, even if we do everything we're supposed to do, we're living up to whatever those expectations are. I hope we are. We're going to fall short. Can't think, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. It's like someone prays and they say, well, I prayed so well, God's going to answer God's going to answer my prayers. That also is the kiss of death. Then also God's going to open up your file because you're going to say everything I prayed today, God should answer me because I prayed so well with such intention. God's going to say, really? Is that really what happened? Let's open up the file. Let's open up the file. How many people are going to pass that test? Don't know. Well, one of the worst things a person can do. That's being well over conceit. And thinking, I did everything that I'm supposed to do. At whatever level. I did everything, God's going to give me what I want. That you got to be very careful. Because when a person says such a thing, God's going to open up your file. And when's the only time you want your file open? Rosh Hashanah. That's it. You don't want your file open any other time. Because then it gets scrutinized more. For other things, for whatever reason. That file will get open. We'll get judged once a year. Fine. More than that, if there's a complaint against what this person's done, let's say made someone jealous. For whatever reason. And that person is suffering. And that suffering goes straight up. God says, what's going on here? Why is the person suffering over here? And they look down, they see this other person caused it. Now it might be unintentional. Might be non-intentional. But he caused the person to suffer. Now let's just say for argument's sake that's the case. At that point, God says, okay, let's see. Maybe this other person doesn't have a claim. Maybe this other person is blowing smoke. And he's just jealous because of his own reason. If that's the case, not a problem. He didn't do anything wrong. But if a person caused it, what happens? His file gets open. Because God's going to say, he's causing damage. He's causing pain to someone else. So let's see if that's really true. And let's see what that person's doing. You don't want that. Right? That's a major aspect of what we call the evil eye. Someone builds an extension to their house. I'm not saying a person can't do this. Right? They build an extension, they do something, whatever. The other person's jealous. Either they can't build or they're doing it in an ostentatious way. Whatever it is, person's got to be very, very careful. Because the Gemara says 99% of people die because of the evil eye. You're going to say, wow, they can't have nice things. Can't enjoy nice things. You got to be careful. Because that could potentially kill a person. Now, if someone's just a jealous type and you're not doing anything ostentatious, then the person doesn't have to worry. You don't have to worry. But if a person's doing something, and and it seems because they have money, power, fame, other things, makes other people jealous. So that you got to be very careful because that could cost the person a life. Cause them to lose all their money. It could cause sickness. A lot of things. A lot of things. It's not something you want to mess with. Now some people say, you don't believe it. You're not going to have that kind of power. Rabbi Rebbe was very, very big in this. Very, very big in this. Took a lot of precautions. A lot of precautions. So even if a person has money, it should be like everybody else. You don't want to tip the scales. Now, I remember a number of things happened to me. One of them being losing all my money. And I went with my wife, speak to my Rebbe about it. I said, do you think I have an eye in horror? Do you think I have this evil eye? And he's like, no, I don't think. He goes, I know. I was like, my wife screamed. So where'd it come from? Who knows? Maybe he flaunted it too much. Maybe, someone got jealous, whatever. So it's better I lost money than my life. And, there's some people know how to take this evil inclination, this evil eye off, pouring lead and whatever. So I remember, I called someone up, gave them my name. Someone's an expert in this. I get a call back a few hours later, like, I don't know what happened in your life and I don't want to know. This person said, but you really shouldn't be alive today. And then you've had a number of things happen. I said, oh yeah. They said, you're not going to be alive. They said, you have this huge evil eye. It should have taken your life. So I said, well, you be able to help me with this? Get rid of this? Thank God. But a number of things that happened, not only happened, but it was totally above nature, against nature. It was totally against nature. If you were to tell me what would have happened, what would the odds be? What would the odds be? So most people know, I'm into statistics. I would have the odds were very, very slim. Very slim. In many different ways. But okay, God has his ways. It was meant to be. But it was totally against nature. Totally against nature. Because again, if you would have looked at it black and white, you would have said the odds. Come on, what are the odds of this happening? Family friend, know my father 30 years, did plenty of business, this, that. You think this guy's gonna, it's a shyster, he's gonna swindle and this. The odds are like zero. I don't mean it can't happen. I'm not gonna say it can't happen. Right, but the odds of something like this, that's above nature. That is above nature. That's not normal. That shouldn't have happened. You're going to say, okay, so better not put all your eggs in one basket and move it around. Okay, everyone's the Monday morning quarterback. Everyone's got all the answers after the fact. I remember many times, that's why I should take it out, this, that. He said, no. You're making money, get it when you want. Was it expected? What he was going to do? Absolutely not. Wasn't something I could have known. It just wasn't. But this was meant to be. That's above nature. You got to say you should have did. Everyone's got an answer. After the fact. Everyone's got an answer. They go, oh, you should have done this. Oh, you should have done that. I heard it a million times. You shouldn't have used your money for this. You should have been working. You should have. Everyone's got an answer. They're all wrong. They're all wrong. Because that's not what happened. There's no reason to think anything would happen. None. Or next to none. Okay. Person gonna take the money, right? Like someone else, take the money, put it in a franchise. So one franchise successful, they tell them, okay, open up a second one. Second one not as successful, took the first one down with it, lost everything. That person's still rip-roaring mad. Got bad advice, this, that. No empathy after the fact. Rip-roaring mad. And if they were done to themselves, right, that would happen, if they would happen to me. And I would have got bad advice, I'll also be mad. Okay, I listened. They're the business experts, fine. Of course. But when you do it to yourself, it's a lot harder. A lot more painful. You did it to yourself. Oh, we got bad advice. So what happened? God wanted you to lose. That's what happened. God built and bam! Knocked them off. That's exactly what he wanted. Now, in my case, that's not what happened. Got taken away in other ways. So again, if a person transgressed Kaufman's 614th commandment, don't be stupid, right? It made a bad deal, whatever. Didn't look into it too much, and etc. Okay. Then you're a fool. Then you have no one to blame but yourself. But see over here, person got bad advice, even though they were business people and whatever. That was advice they got. That's what they did, and it got taken away. I can understand. Maybe the person had doubts. Maybe want to get a third opinion. I don't know. Whatever the case was. What did God want? He lose it. Lose it this way, lose it that way. But I'm asking the question, what's worse? If a person did it to themselves, they got no one else to blame but themselves, that's hard to take. That's hard to take. On the other hand, someone else did it to you, you're not in control, also hard to take. But you didn't do it yourself. And what do you learn? What's the message over here? The message is a lot of messages. One of them is, as much as we think we're in control, we're not in control. And anything can happen, the breath of an eyelash. Anything can change, go up, go down. That's what the Unisson of Sokef says. That we say on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Who by fire, who by water, who becomes rich, who becomes poor. You gotta make people rich or make them poor. Whoever that is. Above nature, not above nature. However it looks. People lose things overnight, people gain things overnight. It's not in our control. Totally not in our control. We think, on the one hand, things look bad, and they do look bad, but really it's a blessing in disguise. Total blessing in disguise. If I would have had money, I would have bought property, let's say in the States, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be where I am today. Right? And not only that, because of the way things unfolded and where I am, I got 2 kids married. To great families here. So you're going to say, but the end justify the means? I'm telling you what the end result is. Right? But when you go through the whole thing and say, this was hard, that was hard, all these different things, 100% true. 100% true. But what's the reality? What's the end result over there? I never would have thought of in a million years. is that I'm going to end up in a place, still not going to have, money to buy a place or whatever. Okay. I'm here longer than I lived in any other place. But what are the odds of all these things happening and finding, two son-in-laws live on the same street, one building apart? The odds are zero. I'll tell you what the odds are. They're zero. That is not normal. But that's the end result. The God took me from here, from there, the other place, this, that. They're going to be all over the place. All over. Then you're going to take 17-year odyssey. And look how hard this was and that was. And what's the end result? The end result is two kids get married in the same place. That's uncanny. That's, when it comes to marrying off kids in general, I've spoken about this many times, absolutely miraculous. And no questions miraculous. They grew up differently, not the same, different places, different mentalities or whatever. It's a whole thing here. But to see this end results, I wouldn't have said that in a million years. Not in a million years. God's irony, in a certain way. But make no mistake, he put me in this place. He got me here. And by getting me here, that's the end result. This is what happened over the last 13 years. That's uncanny. Because if I would have stayed where I was before, it never would have happened. Not in the States, not, not the place I lived. It wouldn't have happened. Not this way. Yeah, they would have married other people, whoever it was. But this was meant to be. I mean, you want to talk about divine providence? Oh, do you see divine providence? When it comes to kids getting married, you see it clear as day. Black on white. No luck over here. Some people would say, oh, you just believe, you this and that. You got faith. You got to have faith, right? You got faith. No, it's not about faith. This is black on white. This is clear. Some say, oh, it could happen. The odds it could happen. The odds are so small. So infinitesimally small. I don't think there's any question. Not about luck. We don't believe in luck. Right? But I would have predicted this. But God orchestrated it. That's how he orchestrated it. And that's really the end result. So with all the steps in between, like in the book of Esther, seemingly all the things that happen insignificant until you put the whole picture together. So now you get the whole picture together. And now you see, the picture's not over yet. I'm saying you see these different things. Now, does that mean every step along the way was easy? Oh, no. Not easy. Not in any way, shape, or form. But what happened? This is what happened. This was the end result. It's uncanny. The Chaim, my daughter, got engaged. I spoke about it. The Shever Brachos on Shabbos, I spoke about it. It's uncanny. Each one of my kids is divine providence. It's unbelievable. I'm not the only one who says it. Plenty of others say it. They say it in their own lives. Oh, I didn't know God exists. There's one good reason. Because the odds of all this happening are so infinitesimally small. You gotta say, fine, this one met this one, and this person spoke to that one, and now put together. A lot of things go on. You want to tell me that it's all, it's all chance? Like Amalek? These are all chance things? I don't think they're chance. Not at all. You gotta be blind not to see it. Could be blind. They say, well, you got lucky. Well, what do you mean lucky here? Look what happened. Look at the scheme of things, the bigger scheme of things. And look at all these different things that happened. And didn't happen. Because if certain things would go a different way, would have been totally different things. Totally different. But again, all these things doesn't mean things go the way we want or things go so smooth. Doesn't mean that. at the same time, suffering like no tomorrow, ups and downs, no empathy, no nothing. Well, look what the end result is. I'm the richest guy in the world here. That doesn't mean everything goes the way we want. And we don't have the eyes to see. Because again, if someone would have told me this, 20 years ago, I would have laughed. I would have laughed the whole thing. First of all, I would have thought I would have lost my money. Second of all, I never thought I would have left Israel. Third of all, I never would have thought I'd come back to where I am and what happened and all that. I would have thought that in a million years. I would have laughed. We had a good laugh at that. I was like, come on. You think this is going to happen? That's going to happen. For God's sake, I'm going to make it happen. We don't have the eyes to see. Right? And all these different things look bad in different ways. Right? But what happens? We think it's bad. In the end, it turned out all right. Doesn't mean it was easy. Definitely doesn't mean it was easy. I had a job a couple of years ago. After 11 months, I got let go, couldn't get unemployment, this, that. And God opened up the heavens. 2 weeks later, opened up the heavens. Totally against nature. Goes against everything I knew for 13 years. How do you explain that? You're going to say I'm lucky? Something never, ever happens? You're going to call that luck? You can't call that luck. Well, it's either you call it you're the luckiest guy or there's divine providence. Because you got no other way to explain it. None. If something happens or doesn't happen every month for 13 years, and all of a sudden, bam, it doubles, triples, whatever, then either you totally change something and all of a sudden different things happen, right? Whatever it is, or there's something else going on. You can't say something's consistent for 13 years, all of a sudden overnight changes for no reason. None. I do anything that much different than I did before. What's the difference? The heavens got open. That's the difference. Why? Could be any number of reasons. But that's against nature. See, that's the thing. Someone would say, I'm an atheist and this and that. Explain this rationally. There is no explanation. You can't say for 13 years, this happened, that happened consistently, and then something all of a sudden overnight changed. What changed? The way people look at the world? No. This? No. So what changed? Something else going on. The only thing a person is going to say, well, you got very lucky. Okay. Maybe you got very lucky, but it goes against nature. When something goes against nature, you can't say that. You got to come up with, something a little bit better. And just say, oh, it's luck. What, 13 years? 13 years, I'm not going to say it's bad luck. But they say 13 years, struggle like this, struggle like that, do this, do that. And then all of a sudden, bam, overnight something changed. What happened? Oh, use a different platform, you use this. People say, oh, you got so many more students because of Corona. No, nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that at all. The only answer makes any sense at all is that God opened up the heavens. That's what he did. No other answer makes any sense. You can say, but you're a God-fearing person. You believe in God. And if you don't believe in God, so what's the answer? You don't have an answer. Because that makes sense according to logic. Look at the Jewish people, how they survived throughout the millennium. Pogroms, Holocaust, this, that, all kinds of things. Shouldn't be here. So what's the reason they exist? That they're still here? You're going to say they got lucky. No other nation would have survived like they did. None. According to nature. And many people said the Jewish people live not according to nature. That shows God runs the world. Because it doesn't make sense otherwise. Any other nation would have been destroyed. Would have been eaten up by other nations. The fact that we're still here and all these great nations that persecuted us, subjugated us, they're no longer around. You get Rome, Greece, you get Babylonia, Egypt, powerful nations. And where are they? They're all gone. A few trinkets of, architecture. Okay, we're living in a Greek world, fine. But powerful Greeks are nothing today. Nothing. Money worth spit. Powerful Greeks ain't worth nothing. Rome, what has Rome done lately? Nothing. Gone. Babylonia, they don't, gone. So why Jewish people exist? Because God wanted them to exist. That's the only reason that makes sense logically. Yeah, I think there are a few questions here. Somebody asks, is it possible to convert in Israel currently? Yeah, if you can get here. Biggest problem of converting Israel is being able to stay here legally. Right? That's a big problem. Right? Why do I say it's a big problem? Because you need a visa in order to convert. Either a work visa or a student visa. So now that the skies are open, people can come. And it's not an easy place to convert for a lot of reasons, a lot of bureaucracy. There's definitely a lot of bureaucracy even when things were good. Meaning no corona issues. There's a lot of bureaucracy. So in order to convert, an Israel person has to be able to stay here legally. To convert any base, any rabbinical court. Again, whether it's student visa or work visa. That's really the only way. There are ways to fight the system if you get here, let's say in a tourist visa, and fight within the system to be able to stay in order to convert. It's not so simple. Not something I would recommend people to do. Live here illegally, have health insurance, other thing. It's very hard. Is it doable? It's doable. But a person, if they come here, there are two ways to be able to stay here. Either by student visa, where there's only really one place here in Israel that for convert will be able to stay here on a student visa, and or a work visa. Now, a person here on a work visa also, also a different issue. It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to be able to stay here. But there's a lot of bureaucracy. Now it's going to be more chaotic because they want to have these other rabbinical courts that are going to, not be recognized by the chief rabbinate, so to speak, and it's going to cause a lot of different problems. So, that'll be another. That'll be something like that. That'll be that'll be an issue with that. So I'm not saying the person can't come. At the same time, person, like I said, should try and be here legally if possible. Right? Again, either by work visa or, let's say by, possibly a student. Student visa. Someone asks, a certain place claims to meet as rabbinic supervision. Okay. How do you check that? How do you check that? Well, if it's rabbinic supervision, or they claim to have rabbinic supervision, then there should be someone to be able to speak to that can verify it. Should be a rabbi there, a mashgiach there, someone who's in charge. Then you should be able to, speak to or try and verify it. How else can it be verified? I don't know. It's a good question. Again, somebody has to take responsibility for the place. they're giving rabbinic supervision, right? So whoever's in charge, a person would have to speak to them and see who they represent, and see what organization and this and that. Somebody here asks, many of the prayers, there's the word selah. Yeah, usually at the end of sometimes in Psalms, right? You see the word selah, right? What does it mean? So, what does it mean? So the Gemara says it means something like, forever. Something's going to continue forever. It's mentioned many times, many times in the book of Psalms. Usually, again, it's going to mean, forever. We mention it, the Shemona Esrei, as well, a number of places. Many interpret it as either being forever or it is so, and it will be, right, so to speak. Others say it was an instruction to singers or musicians. As the Orthodox says, it's commentary to Psalms chapter 3, verse 3. For certain singers and musicians or something like that. But usually, again, means it will be or forever. Usually what it means. Let me see. Someone asked about being treated bad by others. So why are we obligated to acknowledge or even provide time of the day for this person? I didn't say you had to. I just said you can't just curse them out for no reason. And a lot of people would tell you people who cause damage or do other things. They shouldn't be in our heads, no matter what they've done. Within reason. They shouldn't be in our heads. It's a waste of time. Total waste of time. We got many things we need to do and try and accomplish, and and all that. Why should this person? Why should we give them the time of day? You're right. There's absolutely no reason to give them the time of day. It's going to cause more anxiety, more anger for what they've done, exasperate it. Multiply by infinity. Makes perfect sense. Absolutely makes perfect sense. Shouldn't give them the time of day. But again, not giving them the time of day doesn't give me the right to say whatever I want again. Right? I can't just, knock them off and make fun of them and this and that for no reason. Now I have to be careful. But you're right, given the time of the day, why should I? Right? And again, one of the best advice that I was given many years ago is whoever it is, as a family member or so-called friends or whatever, people say things, negative things, make fun, whatever the case is. You look at them like these people are insane. You look at them like they have a 25 IQ. They're mentally challenged. So you're going to say a mentally challenged person says something and does something to you. You're not going to give them the time of day. They're mentally challenged. What am I going to get upset about? They deserve to be, tied up. I'm going to take what they say seriously. But they're making fun. It's painful. I'm not saying it can't be painful. What we're saying over here is when a person says something and they're holding nowhere in the world, why should I take what they say seriously? You're going to say, but I've been stomped on. They made fun so many times. Who cares? Where's the dingbat? Right? My language. They're a dimwit. Dimwit who doesn't know anything about anything. Why in the world would I take what they say seriously at all? You're right. It can be painful. Family, I get it. But that, it's a lot easier said than done. But I can tell you over the years, helped me a lot. Like, Okay, so let someone talk. Let someone spew out the mouth. Great, let them talk. They're a dimwit. Why gonna take someone seriously who's a dimwit? Someone asks, God uses someone like a stick to mock you. Are you supposed to stay around for bad treatment? Who says? What, I have to be a doormat? I have to be a schmat, as we would say. People should just kick me in the head for no reason. So, the golden opportunity, we can say God's giving me a golden opportunity to work on character development, work on not getting angry. The person's a stick, they're going to get punished. Make no mistake. They are going to get punished. Am I supposed to stay around? Who says? Stay away from people like that. Who says I have to have a connection with such people? Even if they're family, even if they're parents, even if they're sibling, toxic. Who says I have to hang around people that are toxic? Does that mean I have to always answer them? No, it doesn't mean that. I would say that someone, if they throw a jibe at you, they throw something at you, most likely they're just trying to get under your skin. And what's the best way to get back at them? Don't even answer. Don't even give them a snappy answer. You don't even answer them. We're going to answer. Because the more you answer, the more they're going to antagonize. But if you get a big mouth like me, it's hard. I'm going to say that's a hard thing to do. But it's a waste of time. You got to sit there and answer them. Put them in a corner and say, come on, my 5-year-old knows more than you do. And you just sit there and spew off at the mouth. Okay. Dimwit. You can't make fun. It's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to get you aggravated. It's a waste of time. Totally wasted time. Right? In other words, someone hammers you. So what? So they hammer you. I'm going to sit there and answer. If someone doesn't know anything, all they're going to do is make fun of you. And they're going to put you down. What do I need that for? I need that like I need another hole in my head. And I learned over the years, you just don't answer people. You don't speak to them. What are you going to speak to them for? But the family. Water's thicker than water. So what? Family's so important. No, it's not. It's not. And if they're going to treat you like dirt, who says, you have an obligation to be around them? Someone asked, horror only count between Jew and Jew. Good question. I don't think it applies to non-Jew. But I would say that I don't think it's a good thing even for a non-Jew to make someone, jealous or whatever, but I don't think it's got the same potency. Most likely it doesn't have the same potency as it would for a Jew. 100%, someone there points out, 100% that, we're not here just to be the butt of someone's jokes or to be made fun of or to suffer unnecessarily. Say, well, that's my tikkun, that's what I'm here for. Who says I have to put myself in those situations? It might be true. You have to go through certain things. But who says I actively have to do that? We're not allowed to put ourselves in harm's way. That's true. Well, let's say a lot of times, or sometimes it's on your control. Right? It's not in your control. And if it's not in your control, right, the question is how you deal with it. It's not in your control. Question is, do I have to be around? And do I have to speak to people who are toxic? And the answer is no. You're close-minded, you're this, you're that. Ooh. Person's in an abusive relationship. Who says you have to be around that? And it's bad. Right? And it's something that affects the person in a negative way. Who says I have to be around it? Totally not healthy. Right? There are things I would agree. Person works, let's say someone points out, works for a difficult employer. True. You got to deal with it. They're paying your bill. right? And not so easy. Okay, that's a different issue. That's a different issue, right? But and who says the person has to stay in that situation forever? Person doesn't have to. If they're able to deal with it in different ways, one thing. Or if not, they should look for another job. But there are things that, we're not necessarily in control of, that these things are a test. But the point is, I'm not looking for this. Not interested in being put in harm's way. If it happens, I have to deal with it. And if it happens with family, you have to deal with how you're going to deal with it. And sometimes, again, I'm not going to say across the board, but sometimes it's better not to have a relationship with family. Probably more times than not, because nothing really good comes out of it anyway, in general. Not saying it has to be that way, but usually it's the case. Usually a JIT or a no-hide, whatever, family usually goes by the wayside. Not always. Not always, but a lot of times. Right? So you have to be part of something where you're getting made fun of and people say things, and who says? They might be, a person may have ulterior motives. Why maybe for some people they may have to have a connection, family-wise. And they're not doing it, because they love them. There are other practical reasons why. And that also might be hard, but could be there are ulterior motives over here as well. At the end of the day, everything will go through a test. Some people have more, some people less. But life is all a test. That there's no question. And I can promise you, most people do not want what other people have. They'll say, "Oh, I'm glad I didn't have this. Glad I didn't have that." Everyone's happy with what they went through. I mean, I'm not going to say happy, but nobody wants what someone else had. In general. But what do we believe? We believe God knows what He's doing. And a lot of it can have nothing to do with what we've done. It has to do with our soul has to go through. It's also not an easy thing to deal with. I would say that maybe that's like 25% consolation. Maybe. But if it happened to a person and they're not liable, let's say, a child's born with leukemia or mentally challenged, it's not their fault, they're not liable. Not liable till after bar mitzvah, till the age of 20. So it has nothing to do with them, it has to do with their soul, what their soul has to go through. Now, a person can think that they may go through a trauma, they may have to go through major therapy. That's not going to necessarily answer up, but the point is it puts things in perspective. Right? That's what it does. Not only that, God gives the ability to people to do the wrong thing. God created evil, right? As it says in Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. Even though the Christians changed, what that means. They changed the meaning of it. But God created evil. Does that mean God's evil? No. He gives people, as Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, He gives people the ability to make bad decisions. He doesn't stop them, or sometimes He does, sometimes He doesn't. Depends what it is. But people can tap into that if they want. Is that what God wants? No. Not interested in that. But at the same time, they have free choice. And if people didn't have free choice, then guess what? We don't need robots. God doesn't need robots. He's got plenty of them. Right? He's got animals, he's got trees, he's got solar systems, he's got everything. What does He need us for? Because we're not robots. We have the ability to think, to make decisions. So God gives us that ability. Totally gives us that ability. So one thing we have to remember, right? The Mission Perkei Avos, one day we're going to get there. The Mission Perkei Avos says, we're born against our will, we die against our will. So in parentheses, I would say you still have to live. So what does it mean? It means we're not in control. We're not in control of our siblings. We're not in control of our parents, socioeconomic situation. Can we be in control who we work for? Yeah. Different ways. If it doesn't work out, you leave. Or they let you go. Whatever the case is. Right? Person works for someone, you're taking a lot of things in over here. Whatever they throw at you, whoever they are. And they could be fickle, they could get angry, the drop of a hat. People not necessarily so easy to work with. Some are, some aren't. It's all a test. And if a person can't handle it, whatever, it's look for another job. But no job's going to be perfect. That we have to realize. Nothing's going to be perfect here. So he's saying you take the good with the bad, and unless it's really bad. If it's really bad, then the person getting abused in different ways, then yeah, that's a different issue. That's a different issue. Yeah, let me see 1 second here. Someone asks, if a person is a non-Jew is partially ungrateful, go to the doctor and say, I feel bad, I have a broken leg. Is that bad? I mean, I don't know too many people going to be whistling Dixie, saying that they're ecstatic they have a broken leg. Right? The question is how you deal with it. That's the whole thing. How a person looks at it. Is that being ungrateful? I wouldn't necessarily say it's ungrateful. Right? Can a person be upset that they're sick? They can be upset they're sick. They have to fight things, to the best of their ability. They have to realize God's the one in control. And he's going to control whether a person gets healthy or not. We have to show gratitude. Even when things are bad, we still have to show gratitude. Because it could always be worse. The famous story of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva married the daughter of Kabbalah Savua. Kabbalah Savua, very, very rich man, cut him off. Cut him off because, he's a shepherd, didn't know anything. Marries his daughter. And they slept on beds made of straw. And Elijah the prophet comes disguised as a poor person. He says, by the way, do you have any straw? You can give me. Rabbi Akiva was ecstatic. He says, here, we're very poor. And they're sleeping on straw beds, but I said, at least we have straw. This person doesn't even have straw. So a person can say, look how hard a life they had. Well, they saw things in perspective. Right? Not always easy to do that. Because when a person's down and they suffer, they don't see anything else. They just want it taken away. They want God to take it away. And it's hard. It's hard to go through a lot of things. But we have to remember there's so much to be thankful for. Tremendous amount to be thankful for. I always say, write a list of 10 things you're thankful for. And then when you're down, look at that list before you rip it up. We have plenty what to be thankful for. But the problem is we get so dejected, depressed, whatever. We can't see it. Can't get out of it in that way. I think it definitely helps. It just gives us perspective. So, it's not an easy thing to work on, but I think that's a good. I think it's a good piece of advice. Someone asks, Deuteronomy 17 is specifically for Jews. All right, let's see. Let's see the reference here. The question is what aspect, right? If the Noahites keep Sabbath when rabbinical law says it's only Jews, that's a problem. That's a serious problem. There are 3 sins. There are 3 things that are signs only for the Jewish people. One of them is circumcision. One of them is tefillin, phylacteries, whatever you want to call them, and Shabbos. Right? The Torah makes clear Shabbos is a sign between God and the Jewish people. But now, non-Jews want to take something that doesn't belong to them. Right? Could come under the category of stealing. Totally doesn't belong to them. And the Torah says you got to listen to the rabbis of all generations. You got to listen to I think that's what the reference here is. Right? Let me see. It says that Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 9, should come to the Kohanim, the Levites, the judge will be in those days. Choir, they will tell you the word of judgment. Verse 10, you shall do according to their word, what they tell you. From that place, Hashem will choose. Should be careful to do according to everything they will teach. right? And according to the judgment, verse 11, they will say to you that you shall do, should not deviate from their words, right or left. So yeah, there's an obligation to listen to what the rabbis say, right? Listen to what the Kohanim say in every generation. Now, doesn't that apply to non-Jews? Who are non-Jews going to listen to? Who do they have an obligation to listen to? Because, I've heard people say, I'm only going to listen to God. Well, good luck. Not going to get you very far. You got to listen to what the rabbis say in every generation. Right? Are non-Jews sitting by not going according to the rabbis? Yeah. Not one of the no-idol laws, per se. Right? But they have an obligation to know what to do, what they're obligated. Who are they going to go to? Who are they going to go to? Who are they going to learn from? They learn from Jews. Totally learn from Jews. So they have to listen to what the rabbis say in every generation. Somebody mentions about the no-idol laws about, someone says non-Jews have a lot of obligations as well as eating kosher. It says they have an obligation to eat kosher. Others say non-Jews aren't going to do anything. It doesn't affect them. Jews, it affects if they eat non-kosher. Makes them apathetic. Right? It causes their soul to be dulled. So the Kli Yakar says in Leviticus chapter 10, a non-Jews aren't going to do anything or not going to keep things that don't affect them. And he says, you see, a non-Jew eats this, eats that, the other thing doesn't affect them. Doesn't affect them, character-wise. Like it would a Jew. Even if science hasn't proven it, that, we are what we eat. And we can get bad character traits from these non-kosher things. Right? But, who says the non-Jew should keep kosher? So you say, well, this, as Rabbi says, well, not everyone agrees with that. Let's make that clear. Many disagree with that. Shabbos is no different. Right? But the Kli Yakar definitely says not that way. And he's not in the minority. A lot say the same thing. If it doesn't affect them, it doesn't make them apathetic, doesn't affect their soul because they don't have the same soul makeup, then why would they do it? That's what the Kli Yakar says. Why would they do it? It's beneficial to their soul. No, it's not. It doesn't affect their soul. It has no effect on them, whatever. They want to eat crabs, let them eat crabs. They want to eat shrimp, okay? Doesn't affect them in a negative way. Who says? Either, well, rabbis disagree. Okay. Things that I've seen say definitely not that way. Someone says in Shema, this part should be said with our eyes, hands covering our eyes. What's the purpose? Intention. First line of the Shema, if a person didn't have intention, you have to say it again. If you didn't have any other intention during the next 3 paragraphs, you don't have to repeat it. Why? Because talking about taking on the yoke of heaven. Taking on the yoke of heaven, you say, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one God, absolute, doesn't change, past, present, future. That's minimal intention. Forget Kabbalah, other things. That's minimal intention. Yoke of heaven. You don't have intention for that. When you said it, you have to go back and say it again. All the rest of the Shema, if I didn't have proper intention, I don't have to go back and repeat it. What's the meaning of washing hands before getting out of bed? Reason is 2 reasons. One, either the person when they slept touched the part of the body that's covered, which means that they would have to wash their hands. Or another reason is because our soul went up to heaven. God returned our soul like a new creation. We have to wash our hands for that reason. The other 1 and 2 reasons. Any other questions? I'll say one other thing, and that is, as we mentioned before, there are a lot of things we have to be thankful for. A lot of things. Now, you could say there are a lot of things we've had difficulty in life also. True. Very true. But, in the bigger scheme of things, God's the one in charge, not me. But I have to do what he says. I have to keep what he says, even if it's hard, right? And that's part of the test. And the Gemara says, according to the amount, of pain, that is the greater reward. The greater the amount of difficulty, the greater the reward. That means it's easy? No. I'm still obligated. Right? But, if we really put it in our minds and put it in our hearts, that's the way the world works. And that's what God wants. So that's what I have to do. Doesn't mean life's easy. Not by any stretch. They're going to say it's a lot easier said than done. But we have to know what to do and then put it in action. Put it in action, as I've heard many times, I've said many times, it's easier said than done. And we have a heart-brain disconnect. For a lot of people, the hardest thing is knowing what to do. They don't know what to do. At the same time, even if you know what to do, then you have to implement it. Implementing it is hard. It's hard. But that's our obligation. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, no other questions. I'm going to sign out just every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wish everyone a good beginning of the day, middle of the day, or end of the day, depending where you are, and everyone have